everyone, welcome to this week's Down the Rabbit Hole. This week we are back on Material Obsession 2, on my patterns from Material Obsession 2. After a small digression off in other directions, we're going to go back to some of the Block of the Month quilts, but today we are talking about this quilt here, which is one of my favourite quilts I've ever made. Now, a lot of the time when you're a quilt designer, people love to ask you what's your favourite quilt that you ever made, and I have a few. It is kind of like asking someone to choose one of their favourite children, like we like to say, but this is one of my favourite quilts, and it's not so much because of the way that it looks, although it's an amazing looking quilt, but for me it's the story behind it that really makes it special. So all of the quilts in Material Obsession 2, as we've discussed previously, are in pairs. So I made one, Kathy made one, and they both had like a theme that went with them. So the theme that went with this quilt was the kite shape. So that's this shape in here that joins the blocks together. That's this shape here. Now this quilt was firstly sparked by a tiny, tiny little thumbnail image, like this big, in a Cave Fassett book somewhere. And it's not one of Cave's quilts, it's an antique quilt that he was, had included like in a collage of things he was inspired by. And I have looked through all of my books and I can't find which one it's in. So if you know, please put it in the comments because I'd love to know. I'd love to know where that original quilt was. I have all of his books and I can't find it. So it's in there somewhere. So I had looked at that and thought, wow, gee, I'd love to make that quilt. Like, that'd be really fun. And then promptly forgot about it, as we do all the time. And then one day we were talking about quilts for the book and we had this kite ruler in the shop. And Kathy had decided that she wanted to use the kite ruler to make a quilt. And I was kind of thinking, I don't really have, like, what do I want to do for that? And all of a sudden I thought of that quilt and I thought about a piece of music. And it's a very specific piece of music. And to me, I just suddenly thought that quilt is that music. And this is the piece of music. It's called Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. So it's ragtime piano. Can you hear the circles? Okay, you can stop. So to me, in my strange little brain, the way my brain works, that piano, I play the piano as well. So that piano piece has two very separate things going on in it. It's ragtime. So you have the bottom hand, the lower part, that is playing that kind of circular round and around and around. And then you have the jangly bits on the top, which are making the dee 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 dee, that noise. So to me, you have all of this circular base, which is like the basis of that whole pattern, and then you have the jangly situation, which is the crazy piecing on the top. So that is how Maple Leaf Rag was actually born, was from that piece of music. And as soon as I'd sort of had the piece of music in my head, and then I had the quilt, and I was just like, that's the quilt that I'm making. However, being me, I decided that I wanted the quilt to have no repeats in it. I didn't want a single piece of fabric to be in there twice. So you can see that there's quite a lot of fabric in this quilt and the not repeating was going to be a challenge. At that point in time, we were running a lot of classes in the shop and I was teaching at least 5 classes a week, sometimes 6 and 7 classes a week. So I taught at night and all of that sort of thing. So I asked all of my students for a strip of fabric or a piece of their scrap from the project that they were working on, because I only needed a very small strip to make one of these rounds, and obviously I needed a lot of scrap for the jangly bits in between. And then we went away on the Material Obsession retreat, which we used to do over a 2-week period. We would go away for 2 weeks and 10 days or 2 weeks, and we would have different groups of people come up within that time. We would stay and the students would come and go and stay with us. I would cook. Everyone would sew and have a great time, and it was very good fun. So I also got all of those retreat people to give me a strip their fabric or some of their scrap, and I raided all the scrap bins at the end of the day. So this quilt is almost exclusively made from pieces of fabric from my students. Some of them are out of my stash, but a lot of them, 99% of them, are fabrics from my students, which is something that for me, I love to teach. I really do. I love teaching. It's one of the great joys of my, what I do in my job. I love seeing somebody satisfied when they've made a quilt and how excited they are and how I can teach them something new and then they're excited by it. So for me, this kind of represents my teaching. There are lots of things in here that are special from my stash as well. There's a little tiny piece of Heather Ross's first collection in there. Heather is now a friend of mine, but back then I didn't know her and I was just an obsessive collector of all her fabrics. I have all the monkeys and all that sort of thing. There's a bit of my favourite fishy fabric. There he is again. See, he crops up. I'm very frugal with my favourite fabrics. There's another bit. And even in this quilt down here, this fabric here is a piece of the tea towel at the place that we were staying in when we did the retreat, which I think is hilarious. I cut up the tea towel and put it into the quilt. So if you were one of my students during that time, you probably know that there's a piece of your fabric in here, and I love that. Like, I absolutely love that. You can see that there's every different kind of fabric you can possibly imagine in there. There's reproductions, there's Japanese fabrics, there's all kinds of novelties, obviously. Where's this bit? This is a piece of a feed sack, a really old feed sack, which is really cool and unusual that one of the girls gave me. There's a Kath Kidson canvas. Like, it's got everything in it. It really does. On the back, which I also love, this is one of the things that we got special order into the shop way back in the day. This is Denise Schmidt's first collection, which then you couldn't get in Australia, and we just thought it was so cool. And so we got the lot and just used it to within an nth of its life because we loved it so much. So that's what's on the back. And that makes this just one of that's my other favourite fishy fabric. Look, he gets in there everywhere. Now, the way that this thing is put together, which is the next thing that you need to know, it's actually put together in squares, believe it or not. So each of these blocks is a square, and they're put together across like this. The pattern has obviously all of the instructions in there, and it also has a kite shape template. We have an acrylic kite shape template, and I got to tell you, if you want to make this quilt, I would really recommend getting the acrylic template as well, because you need to make a lot of crazy piece fabric to get all of these pieces in, and it's so much easier to make the fabric, put the template on the top and rotary cut those pieces out of it. Like, so much easier. It's not even funny. And then those pieces are made up into squares. Now, obviously that means you really have to keep track as you go of everything, because here's a square and this circle comes into both of these squares and it starts introducing this. So now you need to take track of these, and you have to take track of this, and you have to take track of this. So everything needs to be laid out as you go. So if you want to make this quilt and you don't have a design wall, I highly recommend that you get a flannelette sheet or a big piece of batting or something like that. And if you don't have a big wall, you can put it up on, hang it on a curtain rod or something like that, pin it all down. And every time you work on this quilt, get it back out, set it back up, and have a look at where you're going, because it's so easy to start piecing a bit of this one into a bit of this one, and suddenly nothing goes together anymore. So you really do need to keep track of it. Apart from that, the sewing's not difficult, it's just a lot. It's time consuming. Yes, you could absolutely just use your kite-shaped acrylic and cut a piece of fabric. It doesn't have to be crazy pieced, and then you could just do the wheels. Absolutely fine. Over the years, I have seen this quilt done in black and white, and let me tell you, it's one of my favourite things. It just looked absolutely phenomenal. So all low volumes in here, black, white, black, white, black, white. So it doesn't have to be a crazy riot of colour. However, if you do want to make a scrap one, there are a couple of things you need to know about making a scrap quilt, and one of them is don't try and control it. Every scrap quilt needs something in it that's holding it together, If you try to put too many things in there that hold it together, it won't look scrappy anymore. So what's holding this quilt together is those wheels. So because of the repetition of those wheels, it is allowing you to put every single thing in there that you can possibly think in there, because this is tricking your eye into thinking that there's organisation. If you then try to make it really scrappy, but then also only have pinks and only have blues and make everything matchy, it's not going to look scrappy anymore. So if you want it to look scrappy, go scrappy. If you want it to look organised, plan it out. That would be my bits of advice for making the Maple Leaf Rag Quilt. As always, it's available in either a hard copy pattern or a PDF pattern from sarahfielke.com. You can also get the kite ruler, the patterns in Material Obsession 2 if you have the book. That's all you need to know, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.